Michael Della Monica, continuing our series at FATV Studios for the school committee debates for Leominster and Fitchburg. We have the at-large debate, and we have, for Leominster School Committee, we have 4 candidates for 3 available seats, 2 incumbents, Melissa Bible, Salvatore Perla, and we have 2 challengers, Caleb Weldon and Greg Thomas. Greg Thomas presently holds the Ward 3 spot, now running at large, and Caleb Weldon, a newcomer to local politics in Leominster. Welcome to all of you, and let's get right to the questions.
Perfect.
What are the 2 biggest challenges you see for Leominster schools for the upcoming 2 years, your term if elected, and how do you propose dealing with those challenges? We're just going to go left to right here, or my left to right. Caleb.
So the first thing is the losing of COVID money. So a lot of money came into the Leominster school system with the pandemic, and it continued for a few years, and that was really helpful. Just a few years ago, the Leominster schools was having pretty serious budgetary issues, and that was alleviated a little bit when the state pushed a little bit more money towards gateway cities, and including Leominster. But the COVID money really helped. It was able to, free busing. It was paying for sports. And that's about to disappear at the end of this term, I believe. So that's going to be pretty big, and we're going to have to, no matter who wins, every level, cuts are going to have to be made, and more money is going to have to be found if we want to keep some of these programs. And those are going to be hard decisions. The second big problem is, it's kind of a good problem to have in a way, is we have a growing student population, and that's, it's good to be a vibrant, growing city, but we have really packed classrooms, we have really packed schools, and we need to hire more teachers, and we need to have we need to build out the schools. The physical buildings need to be built out to make room for people. And I graduated not too long ago, and even when I was there, it was kind of crowded, and it's only gotten more crowded. And again, it's a good problem to have, but if we don't do anything, it's not going to be a good situation.
Greg Thomas.
So 2 things. One is the hiring of the superintendent. I heard several people mention that in a previous debate. The superintendent drives everything in the organization, the vision, the strategy, what's important, what's not important. So choosing the right superintendent is going to be in the hands of this school committee, and based on people's political leanings and their feelings on things will determine which superintendent we choose. I will say that, Caleb, this is a huge decision that needs to be made by the school district and the school committee, and you have a conflict of interest that will prevent you from voting for the superintendent. So your constituents choose you to represent them and voice their, what their feelings are, and in that case, you wouldn't be able to. So that's concerning. The second piece that I would mention is that academic achievement, we have a lot of kids that have excelled. Fallbrook is phenomenal. J.A. is doing well. Francis Drake is improving. Our middle schools and our high schools are still far behind what they were before. And we're not growing at the rate that we should be academically. So I strongly believe that every child in every classroom in every school deserves the opportunity. And we need to find ways to help those kids overcome and succeed just as much as other children in the district.
Sal Perla.
So I'm not going to say the superintendent. That seems common knowledge for everybody. But one area I think is a big focus that I haven't heard that should be focused on is mental health. Ever coming out of COVID, there's still a lot of concerns out there, family, children, students, and I think we need to have more resources, look for more resources for that aspect of it. My own daughter looking for different resources took a while, so there's definitely a need for that. And then safety overall, total district, school buildings, resource officers, bus safety even. There's been some concerns recently on bus safety and how cars are passing them. What can we do more? The police are definitely involved with that. I know the mayor, superintendent, they've all had conversations with the different departments in the city, but what more can we do for the buses? Can we add more things to the buses to make it safe for them? Can we do more in the schools to make it safe? Hire more resource officers? Those are the different areas we should be looking at to in the next coming 2 years.
Melissa Bible.
I would agree with everything that's been said. My two biggest concerns have also been said, and that's going to be staffing, which includes searching for a superintendent, but also just staffing in general. We have a very varied need of ELL speakers in our district, and we have a great need for paras and ELL translators in our district. And the other thing is space. I would love to be able to hire more teachers to be able to decrease classroom sizes. I think that in and of itself would help our test scores significantly. But if we don't have the space for the classrooms, then it's a moot point.
And then was that was it two things?
Staffing, space.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we have about 6 minutes or so on this topic, so I'm going to open the floor to questions, reactions, comments on any of what's been said. Go ahead.
So Greg commented on the conflict of interest. What he's referring to is my mother is a teacher at Johnny Appleseed Elementary. Now, it's not clear that that does stop me from voting the superintendent. My understanding is I would have to recuse from stuff that would be affecting teachers' salaries, teachers' contracts and stuff. Now, if it is the case, I would have to recuse myself. Like, that would be fine. My understanding is I would still be able to participate in some of the selection process, even if I can't be voting on stuff. And I think I just have a lot to add to picking the superintendent. But even if, I'm not able to, I think that there's a lot of other very capable people. And, generally stuff like this is split up into subcommittees anyway. If I'm not put on a subcommittee that is selecting a superintendent, I don't think that would really affect, I don't think that would really be a problem.
There is no subcommittee for superintendent. That's the total committee.
There's generally a search committee, though, same as principal, so I think that's what he's referring to, that there would be a search committee for the superintendent that wouldn't just be the school committee, and then, once they have a candidate that they're proposing, the school committee as a whole would vote on it.
I mean, I reached out to the ethics department regarding this question. Any school committee member or somebody running for school committee can do that and ask that same question, and it does prevent you from voting on the superintendent. You can attend interviews and you can give feedback, but when it comes down to actually voting, you have to recuse yourself from that.
I think that the voting is maybe the least important part of it in terms of, I think if I'm able to participate in interviews and stuff, like that's really where the meat of the work and the selection comes in. But, if I think it's fine to recuse myself from that. And there are other votes where I would have to recuse myself, but there have been a lot of people on the school committee in the past that have had family that are in the school system, whether there's teachers or other workers, and I won't be the last. And it keeps, things have worked out fine in the past with those periodic recusals for when there is that conflict, and I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Any other topics that anybody raised that any of the candidates want to counterpoint or follow up on?
I would say something about the budget, okay? So we've been, as a city, very fiscally responsible. We have used the one-time cost to pay for one-time things. We're paying for capital expenditures, not operating expenditures. So we're not setting ourselves up to not be able to fund salaries and things like that. We're paying for school gymnasiums. We're paying for contract nurses and things like that. So we're in good shape there. Yes, we've got an influx of money, but we've been very responsible with it. With many cities and districts across the state, they've been asking taxpayers to pay an override. In this time of inflation, we haven't had to do that once. And I would also say that the fact that we had such a great rainy day fund has served us well right after the flooding that we just had. Had we not had the federal money that we received, we wouldn't have been able to dip into that rainy day fund that a lot of people wanted to take money from, including some people that debated earlier tonight, and pay for a lot of the repairs and things that people needed right out of the gates after that flooding.
The financial piece of things, any response?
Yeah, I'll comment to that too. And, the city definitely has been very responsible, but the city is also, and on that note, the city is also somewhat restricted in how much money it can raise. And a lot of funding, unfortunately, is kind of out of our hands because a big chunk of the school's budget comes from the state. And so one important job of the school committee is to be an advocate to the state, talking to state reps, state senators, and saying if we want to have these programs well funded, like a lower income city like Leominster really does need, and it's gotten better. It's gotten better in recent years, but we really do need more state support, I think. And obviously that's out of our direct power But that is kind of the bully pulpit almost, to advocate as a school committee member that to the state. And I also wanted to comment on transportation really quickly. And oh, sorry, did you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
I think that's really important because a lot of kids don't feel very safe walking to school. A lot of kids get driven that really wouldn't otherwise, because the buses really could be better funded. They could be better on time, and a lot of that. I don't know if we in the future need to look at different contracts or if anything will be available, or if it's just a matter of funding it. But I was in school not that long ago, and a lot of people didn't take the buses when they probably would have been better off taking the buses because they didn't want to be late, or they didn't want to walk to the bus stop along streets where there were speeding cars. And ideally, a lot more kids would be just taking the bus.
Anything to add to you?
Yeah, with the funding, I think we just got to really pay attention to the student population and what's coming in. I know right now we have like 6,000 plus students, and Chapter 70 calculations I know just get revamped. So I just think we got to be mindful, and to your point, getting with the state reps and senators, making sure that we're getting the right funding as we continue to increase our student count in Leominster.
Okay. Just one thing, just a few more seconds on this topic. One thing that the previous two candidates brought up right away, I haven't heard mentioned yet, school security. Fortifying the buildings or school resource officers. Do we have some agreement in that area?
I brought that up under my 2 points.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Okay. All right. So
I did bring that up. Yeah, no, I agree. We definitely should, have, some more conversation. We, this recently started the safety committee with the school committee, along with the other cities departments and with the police, fire, and so forth. So we're making strides in that direction. We just got to continue those conversations and communication to see what out there we can do to better secure our schools and make our students safe.
Yeah, I think that school resource officers provide a lot of value, and even just beyond worst case scenarios, just having them there can really help with just lower level safety. So I think it'd be great if we could have more school resource officers in the schools.
I do want to correct from the earlier debate that I heard, though, that there were fewer resource officers, I think someone said, or equal amount, where we have added 2 resource officers this year. There were years where we were billed for resource officers that weren't being provided, which is a different discussion, but we do now have 3 resource officers. Do I think maybe we need another 1 or 2 to help balance out amongst the elementary schools? I'd be open to that discussion.
So if we can move on to question 2, while Leominster, and it's been touched on a little bit, while Leominster's middle schools are newer by at least state public school standards, and the high school was recently refurbished, our youngest elementary school is still more than 50 years old. And Fitchburg recently had approved a brand new school, ground up brand new school. There's talk about Fallbrook and some things in the work there, but those plans are not concrete yet. Is it time for Leominster to aggressively apply for funding for a brand new ground-up elementary school or 2? We'll start with Greg Thomas.
So whether Fallbrook gets rebuilt or renovated, it's almost a done deal that one or the other is happening. The question is, can you do more than one school at the same time? No, I don't think that's even possible or feasible financially. We've done a lot, though, in terms of renovating with a lot of the COVID money, a lot of the influx of state money. We've redone gymnasiums. We've improved the media center at Samoset. We've replaced the bleachers there. So we've made a lot of incremental improvements in the schools. In the future, hopefully we can look at other buildings. But right now, Fallbrook is most certainly the priority, and we're going to be doing one or the other. So,
Sal Perla.
Yeah, to echo what Greg's been saying, the last couple of years there's been a lot of improvements throughout the district with heating systems, improvements in gymnasiums. We just recently just signed a new lease for the new LCE to be relocated to a new building. So I think the city is doing what we can to improve these areas. Hopefully the Fallbrook comes back as that will become a ground up. I think that'd be great for the city and the community and so forth. I think it just I guess we're tied by what the state will allow us to do and what kind of funding we can get. If we could aggressively go out there and build another school, let's do it. Let's go for it. But I think there would need to be some more homework, no pun intended on that.
Melissa Beimel.
I think space is absolutely an issue within our district. Everyone has a concern about data scores, and I think, some of that is lost in classroom sizes being what they are, and growing on a daily basis. But the reality is as a minimum net school spending district, it's not going to happen anytime in the foreseeable future. I know at least for 10 years, even prior superintendents were talking about a need for our youngest kids who are in the oldest buildings at Pre-Street and Bennett, and have some of our greater physical needs at times. Accessibility is a real issue for some of our kids into some of these buildings. So I think thinking outside the box into spaces that the city can rent with services is probably going to be something we need to look at, because we do have overflow in all of our schools.
Caleb Walden.
Yeah, I would love to see if we could get the money together to build a new school or do a major renovation. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of overcrowding in the schools, and it's only going to get worse. So we definitely need more space. And if you do a renovation, you ideally would have a renovation that would be adding more space for the lower grades. But I mean, beyond just the lower grade schools, I think that we have a deficit of kind of infrastructure spending at all of our schools. I mean, I know that some of the other elementary schools, they don't have adequate air conditioning. I know there's leaks in the roof of the high school and some of the other elementary schools. It's kind of all over. And there's been a lot of investment in recent years, particularly with COVID money. But I really would like to see just a lot more investment in fixing up some of these issues, especially with HVAC and just ceilings and stuff.
Okay, so we'll open up for discussion. You had your hand up?
Yeah, so I think the issues that have happened in the past with net school spending, there was a lack of trust between the school committee and the mayor's office. And I think we have significantly improved that in the last couple of years, actually as a school committee as a whole. So not just a group of people, but the entire committee. That's only going to benefit us in the long term. And when we do need to come to him and say, or the city council as a whole, and say we need additional funding for a particular thing, I think there's going to be more trust, because in the past, school committee has received money, especially during COVID, that the school committee at times refused to acknowledge the money that was received from the mayor's office, downplayed the amount of funding that was coming in during that first half of the school year. So we work very closely with the mayor as he's on the school committee, and have good relationships with the city council in general. So I have confidence going forward that as we need to come forward with more over net school spending, because we've been fiscally responsible for the last several years, that when the time comes and we actually really need something and we're clear about what we're going to use it for is another important thing, that we're going to be able to get that. And if the time comes where we're asking for something that's necessary and we're not getting, I'll be right there with everybody else, pushing for that and fighting against that cut.
Did you have your hand up first?
Go ahead.
Just going back to the renovations and such, we just had a big renovation undertaken in Francis Drake, taking down the old portables and getting new ones in there. So, going back to the city and the schools and reinvesting into those kind of areas, I think we've done a good job the last couple of years in seeing the needs of that and addressing when we can.
Anything to add? At the moment. So one thing I want to throw out there, and you touched on it a little bit, I don't recall, and maybe if you've studied other school districts you can prove me wrong, but the Leominster High School thing, and maybe I'm just speaking out of self-interest because I have a child that goes to Leominster High School, but I rarely remember the scope of renovations that was a school that was from the very early 60s, older than Fallbrook, for instance, and they did what they term a complete renovation, although maybe some areas weren't touched, but did a pretty thorough renovation. And it was actually a declaration saying, all right, we're good for the next 50 years when they did that back a few years ago. I've rarely seen that. I've seen these new schools built from the ground up. Do you think that these types of super renovations are effective? I see you shaking your head a little bit.
I think Leominster's in a unique situation with our school building being what our building is. We're, I think, incredibly fortunate, that CTEI and Leominster Public School, and for right now, LCE, are on one campus. I think if we were to try to rebuild a Leominster high school, we'd have to make a really hard decision about whether we'd want to separate those two buildings, and I don't think that's necessarily the right decision, because the cost of trying to replicate the services and tools and spaces that we currently have at LCE, I don't know that we could do as a traditional high school build.
Anybody add one?
Yeah,
No,
so you're asking about the renovations, and I think that they can be really great because, it's a lot cheaper than building a whole new building. But I graduated in 2017, so I started there, right after some of those renovations, and it was a running joke that the bones of the school didn't really get fixed up. I mean, there was leaks the whole time. It was clearly an old building just under the surface, and I think that there are real limits to total renovations. And maybe that was just that renovation. Maybe it could have been done better, but I think that at a certain point you really can't. At a certain point, a building just gets too old, or you need to spend a lot more money than we did on that. And I think there are a lot of limits to it. And that's something where we're talking about potentially redoing some of the elementary schools. And I'd be very open to just doing a kind of renovation because again, it's much cheaper, but you can't, it's not going to add 50 years. I think that was maybe optimistic when they said
Well,
that.
sometimes renovations, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but sometimes renovations could actually be more than just a regular rebuild too. So just, that's why the state's involved. We have our project manager. They're going to make that decision, and we move forward with that. But sometimes doing the remodel could just cost just as much as just tearing it down and rebuilding it from the beginning.
And that's what the evaluation process is by the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, is they look at what is failing, what part of the infrastructure of the building is failing, and what is the cost to renovate it versus replacing it. In Fallbrook's case, there's a lot of critical infrastructure there that is failing, that is going to cost a lot of money to replace. And we're talking about the numbers that I heard with the amount that the MSBA is willing to fit the bill on a complete replacement is 76% or something along those lines. So, and I think we have to look at that too, and when we're advocating for one or the other. A new school building is going to help our property taxes for sure versus a renovation.
But I think also, and this isn't a disagreement, it's the debate of rebuild or renovation. Any of us that purchase anything new right now, whether it's an appliance or whether it's a car or whatever, things don't last the 50 years that the high school did when it was built. So whether we build a new school, we're still going to have issues. Some of the issues that we've had at the high school and Skyview have been issues because we've had the new plumbing that have supposed to help us be more self-sufficient. And in reality, those fixes made it harder to complete repairs when needed.
I have a boiler that needs replacement after just 6 years because, of course, it's all about me. So
Good luck.
just add that. So you hit me right there with that comment that you just said there. So, all right, moving on to question 3. All right, reforms to Massachusetts school financing. It's been alluded to already tonight. Has resulted in increased funding to some of our cities. We're getting a bigger slice of pie than maybe we were years ago because of the reforms to the Massachusetts formula. So at the same time, Leominster, the city of Leominster, has had a policy over the last many years of really being a net school spending. We're a city, we're an urban area, we're a net school spending district. So this is what the state says we should spend. All right, we'll do that, and we'll go a little bit above, but we're not going to totally overextend ourselves. And that resulted in some contentiousness in past school committees. With the recent changes to the state formula, it's been less contentious as a result, okay, the way that Leominster does things. So with that all said, in light of what's happened on the state level, Do you think that the way Leominster approaches it is the right way and they should keep going that way, the fiscally responsible path, or should they extend themselves more? They usually take in a surplus every year. Should they extend themselves more, be known as more of an education city on the local level in that respect in terms of funding? We'll start with Sal Perla and we'll go around.
Yeah, it's a definitely balancing act. Since COVID, we all know that there's a educational gap. So do we have to spend a little bit more to close that gap and get to the students where they need to be? That's something we could definitely look at. A lot of this other funding with Chapter 70 that, like you alluded to, getting reworked, that was great for the student body that we had when they reworked it. But as we know, it's increasing every year. So that money is only going to last so long. Our ESSER funds from COVID are, going to be going out pretty soon. We got another year or two left of those, and now that free money that we got from the feds are going to be gone. So we really got to look at all those number lines and making sure, we are fiscally responsible, but is there other areas that we can use to increase our funding and make sure that we're giving the correct curriculums, granting the correct programs to our students, and closing that gap with all of them, and continuing to succeed in Leominster.
Melissa Bible.
I'm very torn about this, and I have felt this way for a very long time prior to even being on the committee. I think our budget, as many have said, is a moral document, and we fund the things that are important to us, and when we're just funding the minimum, I struggle with that. At the same time, I don't think we can go significantly over minimum net school spending because we have the money. It's not right to go to taxpayers and say we want more when we really right now have what we need. Would I like to see us be able to grow and be able to offer more services, more programs, have more space, do all of these things? Absolutely, but I don't know that now is the time for that. But I do think that's a discussion that we're going to have soon, unfortunately.
Caleb Weldon.
Yeah, I agree with that about the budget being a moral document, and it is difficult because the city does have a lot less ability to raise money than like a state or the federal government does, and so it is always difficult to go and say like we want to have more money. But it is I don't love that year on year out, good years and bad years, we're always right about, sometimes a hair above net school spending, and I do wish that we could rise above that to some degree because you can really see it in the schools. We have somewhat crowded classrooms. There's relaxed programs that better funded schools have, and no amount of effort on curriculum or like other policies can really replace just having more teachers and more programs. Like he said, it is a balancing act. Like what level that is. Like I would want to be higher, but it is difficult to go to the city and ask for that, given that it's so limited raising money and so difficult to raise more money because it's very limited in terms of like property tax, and it's difficult to raise more, especially because it can vary so much. So like having that surplus is valuable because some years it can go down or expenses can go up unexpectedly, and so you don't want to be right at you don't want to have no surplus because then if there's a drop then you have nothing. You have to go into the rainy day fund. But I would like to see us rise above net school spending.
Greg Thomas.
So I really like, Melissa, your answer. It's true. We have to. The challenge of spending other people's money is always difficult because from one year to the next, there may be inconsistencies. We may have an increase of $18 million over the last 2 years. We may see a decrease of $9 million in the next year. And the last thing we want to do is lay off teachers. The last thing we want to do is set ourselves up to be in a place where we're extending ourselves farther than we can handle. So I do think that we need to take a kind of middle of the road approach. Now, I think now is a good time to be fiscally responsible with the money, right? We have a surplus. We've done a lot of great things in terms of how we spent money. We spent it in capital expenses, to provide supplies for all our students, to waive the fees, to waive the AP exam fees, the theater fees, all these things that are great things to use when you have a surplus of money instead of operational expenses. At the same time, I hope that, and I believe that if we are fiscally responsible during difficult times, that when the time comes where we need to extend ourselves and we need additional funding, that we will be able to go to the city and get what we need.
Talked about that a little bit. You had a follow-up with that,
Yeah,
and then I'll just make my point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to comment, like, in terms of difficult times, like we are just post-COVID, and there has been a big learning gap, with the remote classes and like all that disruption. Like, this is a time where a lot of kids, I think you mentioned earlier, kids need to catch up, and so like, I'm not saying that this is the time to go crazy to like, hire a ton of teachers right now and like spend all of our money, but like this is kind of the difficult time. And if we were like on the track we were 4 years ago before that happened, and we were in a time where like revenue was up and things were going well, I could see like that's a time to be like very careful, save up for when tax revenues drop. And again, I'm not saying that this is go crazy with it, but I think that it is reasonable at this particular time to put a little bit more focus on hiring teachers and trying to catch up to where we should have been.
Anything to add this side? Nope. Okay. So no, I just it's a system that that's sort of in Leominster that maybe works better now than it did previously. So again, get your thoughts on it, building on something that Greg mentioned and Melissa mentioned as well, specifically this system where essentially the mayor's office, city council, okay, here's what you get. If you need more, come see us. That caused a lot of conflict. If this were 2015, there were little mini, wars and skirmishes that would break out, okay? We're not in 2015 anymore. This system seems to work a little better, and I don't know if it's because of the increased state funding or not, but I mean, so specifically, what are your thoughts on this whole, the way Leominster's always done it, like if you need more, come get more. I'll come to you. Let me just get Melissa's thoughts and then to go with Caleb.
I want to be incredibly optimistic and think that what Greg has said and Sal has said is true, and that by having developed a better working relationship when we need the money, and there is more trust, that the city will provide it. That has not historically been the case over a number of years, not just COVID. The mayor has not trusted previous superintendents and previous committees, and so he's minimally funded the budget so then he can pick and choose his pet projects that he wants to fund. We've elected him. He's our mayor. People seem to like that system, but I don't feel like it works well for a school committee in developing a good working relationship. Hopefully we're in a better place right now. We will see.
Okay, Caleb and then Sal.
I think I'd agree with most of that. I think overall, like it's not a problem now because we got more money. We got more money from the state, then we got money that we could use for capital expenses from the federal government, but it's been an ongoing issue for years. Like it keeps on coming up, and the mayor is, he's using his position to kind of assert more control than mayors in a lot of other cities that in theory have very similar systems on the surface have. And I really do wish that it was kind of more how other cities have it, where instead of, as you said, like him saying you have this much and you can come back to me, where it was just agreed at the start of the term, whereas more focused on the school committee and the city council making these agreements ahead of time and not giving so much discretion to the mayor, because I'm not really sure if I see what value it adds, and it just causes this kind of friction every time there's a year where we don't have extra money. And it hasn't been a problem these last few years, and hopefully with the changes to the state funding it won't be a problem going forward, and maybe it won't be, but I think I would like to see a change to that.
And I think this is why the superintendent search is going to be very important, because we've had a great superintendent the last few years, 7 years, that has gained the trust and has that trust that you can almost have that come see me kind of attitude. You're going to have a whole new superintendent with their own views, their own thoughts on how money should be spent, and going into a whole new city, externally, internally, whoever it comes from. That superintendent search is going to be very important when it comes to that aspect of it, because it's going to be an unknown. And as we've seen with other superintendents out there, Some school districts just after 6 months get rid, vote them out. You have issues in other districts, having emergency school committee meetings because they lose millions of dollars. So it's going to be very important at that aspect during that superintendent search.
So to be clear, I think there's a very good reason for the lack of trust to exist between the mayor and school committee in the past. You could take COVID. When we started the year, remote learning, in my opinion, that decision was made because they were the 5 people that were voted against in-person learning were upset over the budget and the cuts that were made. During the school year, there were several instances where the mayor provided additional funding, especially in the fall. A lot of it was not recognized by the budget chair. And at the end of the year, there was actually a surplus of money when part of the closure was attributed to a lack of funding needed by the school. Throughout that school year, the recordings of the budgetary meetings are there. Sue Calder, who was a member of the budgetary committee, frequently couldn't attend the meeting because they were scheduled on nights that she wasn't there, that she couldn't attend, and she was left off of invites. The meeting recordings are right there. So there's a lot of reason to have a lack of trust between the school committee and the mayor. But as I said, I think the entire school committee in the last few years has done a very good job rebuilding that relationship as an entire team. So
we can extend this a little bit if anybody has anything to add regarding.
Just to be the devil's advocate, I disagreed with the funding, and I still voted for us to go back. So I don't think it was all necessarily related to that. And there was
you were not part of the 5, and
right.
Yeah. So I totally Thank you for clarifying.
I wanted to comment that there's legitimate reasons on both sides for there being a poor relationship, but I also I don't like how the system is kind of set up where there's this expectation for you're saying the school committee was not thanking him or being appreciative enough, and I don't think that that should be necessary. If he's giving the money and they're receiving it and they're doing their job with it, why is he then potentially why is this bad relationship purely from them not being kind of deferential enough? I'm not sure if I like the way that was going at the time, and like you said, it's been better over the last 3 years, and hopefully it'll continue to be good. Hopefully those hard times are behind it, and it'll just be smooth going forward. But I don't think that there should be an expectation of people being deferential or thankful for getting the money that they need for the school system at any given time. I mean, it's not a gift; it's funding for the schools.
It's about building relationships, though, and you have to build relationships with people in different areas to get things done, and that's part of it. I mean, it just is what it is.
So let's move on to question 4. We have to truncate question 4 a little bit in terms of, but I wanted to make sure we gave enough time to question 3 here. But question 4 is important as well. Nationally, school committees or school boards, depending on what state you're in, have waded into some hot-button political issues. And now the terms I'm using, I don't mean to editorialize, but these are the common buzzwords you hear. Cancel culture, book banning, and gender politics, all these various topics that you're seeing a sort of an overlap with political matters and school matters. To what extent do you believe that these issues are going to come up the next 2 years? And to what extent do you think they should come up the next 2 years? We'll start with Melissa.
I think they can come up and have come up because even if you just look at the last 2 or 3 years and some of the palpable anger and frustration over returning to schools and masking, I certainly, see the topics of book banning potentially being an issue. I think Leominster's a really diverse community, and I don't think there is a space for behavior like that. I think our job is to educate kids, but our job is also to educate and support all of our families in our community, whether that's same-sex families or parents, whether it's is, multiracial, multi-ethnic. I think our job is to support all of our families and to make sure that our policies don't provide inequity or mirror what our schools look like. So I fear that it could be a topic. I truly hope that it doesn't, because I think if we teach to what we're supposed to and what DESE tells us is our curriculum and our framework, this should be a non-issue.
Caleb Malden.
So, masks were contentious, but besides that, I think a great thing about Leominster so far is that we've managed to advance a lot of, inclusive policies without really causing too much, kind of culture war issues, too much backlash. And I think that the track we've been on so far has been good. So even since I went there, things have kind of gotten better in terms of like some of the policies of schools in terms of inclusivity, and yet, I wouldn't want to cause any of those. I would not want to go out of my way. I of course oppose any kind of book bans, but something great about Leominster is I don't think there's too much of a danger of that coming up in here, and I think that we've managed to avoid that. We've managed to avoid, too many, parents have not been calling for these things like they have in some other places, thankfully. So that hasn't been something that has had to be too much of a conflict, and as long, like she said, as long as we're sticking to the guidelines from DESE and sticking to, teaching history as it is, I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. At least it hasn't been, and I think that maybe I'm hopeful, but I think that it'll continue to go smoothly.
Greg Thomas.
So I am not a supporter of book banning. You can go on my Facebook page, Greg Thomas Ward 3. I have a policy there that I think is very fair and reasonable in terms of how we moderate books and how we look at high school, middle school, and elementary school and what should be in there and what shouldn't be. I think it's fair and reasonable that the average person can agree with. With that said, there have been several things in other school districts across the country, not Leominster, that I'm deeply concerned about in terms of what books I've seen. That's not here, okay? Make that very clear. But who we hire as a superintendent is going to drive a lot of these decisions and what is allowed and what's not allowed. Mm-hmm. This is the most important decision that we will make in the next 2 years. Who the superintendent is, Paul has done a great job. And a lot of the things that are happening out east of us are not happening here. And I'm incredibly grateful for that, and I hope that continues. As far as gender politics and gender identity, every child in our school deserves to come to school and be treated fairly, feel safe, and be treated just the same as every other child. There are complex challenges around gender identity and some of those mental disorders and things that go along with it. We need to be sensitive to that, but at the same time, we need to focus on overall kids and making sure that we have zero tolerance for bullying. If a situation comes up where any racial comments or mistreatment by somebody because of their gender, that needs to be squashed right away and dealt with extraordinarily strict, disciplinary action.
I kind of concur with what you guys are all saying. I hate going last for this stuff, but Leominster is a very diverse community, and to Greg's point, every child should be equitable, have the same, no matter where, background, identity, whatever, should have the same education, same support, same everything as the student next to you, no matter who you are, where you come from, race, color, creed, etc. So hopefully, this doesn't become a topic for Leominster. I think, we do a great job as a community in whole. We always come together, with the recent floods and everything. So I hopefully don't see any of that becoming an issue.
We have about 3 minutes or so on this topic. If anybody wants to follow up with anything that anybody said. Nope.
I don't want to bring too sharp a point to it because, on some areas we did agree with that, Greg. I did take some issue with, and maybe I just misheard you, and you can correct me if I did, with you saying the issue of mental illness in relation to gender identity. And I do want to be clear that part of being supportive is recognizing that people that have these identities, they're not broken. That's just how they are, and part of supporting them is just letting them come as they are. it's not difficult to be inclusive. You just need to like let them come as they are and let them live their lives. And I think our teachers have done a good job of that. I mean, I know a lot of the teachers I had were very supportive of the kids that were in my grade, like just 6 years ago, that were, members of this community, and so that's all I had to say.
The problem I see as I said, gender dysphoria is a complex problem, right? And we're seeing in other districts, teachers and administrators thinking that they are medical professionals trying to treat these students in a way that they don't know how to do, okay? These are situations that parents need to be involved. We have some great relationships with teachers, my kids' teachers. We have a great relationship with that. Teachers, administrators, parents, and children all need to be working together in conjunction with one another, supporting each other, not against one another. And that's something that I've seen in other districts and heard in other districts, and I don't want that to happen here. So again, hiring the right superintendent that's going to drive these values and things are the most important things in my mind for this position. So,
to your point, Greg, about having parent involvement, just seeing the open houses and how well they're attended, I think, we have a lot of great parents and a lot of great parent involvement throughout the community. So I want to echo that. So
I do notice that with Leominster, the parking lots are always full at these open houses. That's something. We have a lot of parental engagement in this city, and hopefully that translates to the polls. Because again, I'll mention this again at the end. That we like to see these local turnouts be a lot higher than they are.
Yes,
in terms of that. We just have a couple of minutes. Let's try a fun little thing on the fly here. It'll either blow up horrendously on me or it'll work just great.
Steel cage.
One to two sentences. All right, if you're elected this term, you're going to be involved with choosing the new school committee. The new superintendent in some fashion. You'll be involved. So 1 to 2 sentences. What are you looking for? We'll just go around. Caleb Weldon.
Well, one part of that is leadership, because the superintendent, they're not just an administrator, they're also the face of the school district. They're the face of the school district in relation to the parents, in relation to people working in the schools. And I think it's important to get somebody that's not just going to, they're not just going to do the bare minimum. They're going to go out there. They're going to be engaging with people. They're going to be talking. They're going to be trying to communicate like what the schools are doing, how they're operating, why they're doing what they're doing. Because I think that, one issue, and I've liked a lot of our past superintendents. I don't want to speak too poorly of them, but, I think a lot of people didn't really hear from them. They didn't really know what was going on. They would, have to hear stuff through teachers, through school committee, through city council, and I think that'd be great to have somebody that wanted to be, more part of that.
Somebody who prioritized academic achievement and excellence at all levels in every school and every grade. Somebody who's an inspirational leader, somebody that brings in talent, that teachers and administrators want to come work for this person because they're inspirational. We have retention, right? We know that there's a teacher shortage. Somebody who drives inspirational leadership, where they have teachers that come here. We retain teachers. Those are the biggest things for me.
To the point, somebody that's engaged with the community out there, talking with the parents, talking with the teachers, talking with the administration, seeing what the needs are out there, and taking action against those questions and concerns. And then the second part of that would be their background on how they improved student achievement, to Greg's point, and what their goals are to get Leominster to that next step.
If I had to pick 4 words, it would be, I loved inspirational, communication, equity, and leadership. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, everybody. Now we'll go right to closing statements. You have up to 3 minutes to make your case. You don't have to use all 3 minutes, but you have that available to you. And we'll start with Melissa Bible. And we'll go around this way.
Perfect. All right. First, I'd like to thank the team at FLAP for putting this together. My name is Melissa Bible, and I'm a lifelong resident of Leominster. I graduated from LHS in 1993. I'm incredibly thankful for the education that I received from the Leominster Public Schools, and it was a factor in the decision that I made to continue to live and raise our children here. I've since had 3 of my children graduate from the Leominster Public Schools and continue to have a child that is thriving at Francis Drake. My family has had a generational dedication to community service in Leominster and wanting and working for the best of all of our residents. Over the past few years of service with the Leominster School Committee, I've worked hard to ensure that I am thoughtful, approachable, and a dutiful member. In addition to my regular meetings and attendance, I've sat on and attended our policy subcommittee, the high school principal search committee, the special education coordinator search committee, the supporting arts and equity grant through DESE, and addressing hate in athletics in schools conference. I've worked hard to ensure that I'm accessible to all families and staff. I'm proud to say that I regularly attend every possible ability to celebrate the diversity of our schools and families. You'll regularly see me at sporting events, from football to wrestling to cheering to soccer. I'm incredibly proud of our E-Wing students and have been at every theater, production, and art show held. I was the initial voice on policy that motioned to have fees for athletics and clubs and transportation be waived. I will continue to advocate for these services to be included to assist and provide equity to all of our students. While I'm thrilled at the opportunities we have been able to provide in Leominster, there's still work to be done, from expanding equitable opportunities, diversifying our staff, and catching ground on learning loss that occurred during COVID. We have been incredibly fortunate to have a dedicated superintendent. However, I also look forward to helping search for our new leader in the year to come. Thank you for your support on Election Day.
Salvatore Barilla.
First things first, I just want to, there was a fire in Leominster early today. I just want to wish everybody there, firefighters, police, families, prayers and best wishes. I hope everybody was safe for that, literally right before the debate. So hopefully no students were involved or anything with that aspect. But 2 years ago, it was the parents that came together that started, getting on the school committee. But since then, being on the committee, myself, Greg, Melissa, other parents on the committee, we worked really well together. And we've achieved a lot in the last 2 years working as a group, working together. Been on policy subcommittee with Greg and Melissa, reviewing, changing, making adjustments to our current policies for the future. Also been a part of searches for the Samoset new principal, Northwest new principal. And I'm just really looking forward to the challenges coming up the next 2 years, especially working with a new superintendent and what that comes with that. We still need to focus on like I said at the beginning, mental health with the students, and as well as safety, and working on the educational gaps that, last report that we got, it looks like Leominster's on the right track, and we just got to keep working on that way, and I'm looking forward to be a part of that.
Greg Thomas.
Thank you. My name is Greg Thomas. I appreciate Ms. Delmonica and FATV for the opportunity to come here tonight. 2 years ago, along with 3 other dads, we started a campaign of Kids First as a result of some decisions during COVID that resulted in kids not being placed ahead of politics, ahead of adults, and financials, right? And so over the 2 years, we have fought hard to be fiscally responsible, bring students back, provide enrichment through, we're in the process of building 3 new playgrounds. We've done tremendous amount of infrastructure improvements. We've improved safety, including adding 2 additional SROs. We also we started a safety committee with the police department, which we have a member of from the school committee on there. And I'll be happy to say, the school committee as a whole has done a great job together. I feel like we've grown, and despite our differences, we've made a lot of progress, and that's everybody included. We can do more. And over the next 2 years, the first thing and the most important thing that we do is we find the superintendent that has the right vision and strategy for our city and our needs. That's where I'm here for. I'm also here to continue with student achievement growth and making sure that every student is successful. In addition to that, over the last 2 years, I've served on Jeff Deal's campaign as an advisor and helped him craft up this Parents' Rights Bill of Rights, and I'm very happy about that. I'm a tremendous. I continue to lead in the community. I coach a boys soccer team. My shout out to the Lightning boys out there, my boy 3-4, grades 3 and 4, and my wonderful kids, Gabby and Allie, who are 10 and 8. I do this for them, and I'll continue to do it for the other kids as well. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Caleb Weldon.
Well, first, thank you, Michael, for hosting this forum. My name is Caleb Weldon. I graduated from Leominster High School in 2017. I attended Leominster Public Schools all my life. I grew up here. Leominster Schools, CTI in particular, really helped prepare me for my current career as a mechanical engineer, and that was a great opportunity, and I really hope that this next generation can get that same opportunity. I think on the whole our schools are on the right track. We can do better, but I think our schools, the buildings, they need to be repaired. New ones need to be built. I don't have kids, unlike a lot of the people on this committee, but I think that that gives me a unique perspective as a young person, as a recent graduate. I was in these schools more recently than anybody else. I was in the buildings that are still running. A lot of my teachers are still there. My mother was a teacher, as was mentioned earlier, and I think that gives me a unique perspective. I saw the educator's side, both as a student and as the son of an educator. If anybody has any questions, I want to be very open. I want to answer any questions, if any concerns. You can find me on Facebook, Caleb Weldon for Leominster School Committee at Large. I want to be as responsive as possible to the community, because in the end, the schools, they're for everybody. They're for the students, they're for the parents, but they're also for the community. Our schools are the center of Leominster. We have a great school system. CTI it's a gem. It really is. It's not a lot of districts have something like that, and it's really incredible. And I think a lot of people are proud of it, and I'm certainly proud of it. So, thank you.
Well, thank you to all the candidates. So just a rundown. Well, if you've made it this far, you've seen 4 people who have made their best case for why they should serve on the Leominster School Committee at Large. Now, these are not ward races. This is the at-large race. That means the entire city of Leominster, November 7th, will have the opportunity to choose 3 out of these 4 individuals to serve on the 3 at-large seats on the Leominster School Committee. Again, it's citywide in terms of the election, and you can use all 3 choices or use 2 of the 3 choices, and well, you know the drill on that. So that's your opportunity. But again, not to repeat myself, but I said I would repeat myself at the end of each of these segments, that local elections feature the people who are likely to directly affect your life the most. But yet they continue to be the least attended elections in this country. It's just funny how that works. So get out there. These folks are on social media. Reach out to them. And they may be coming to your door at some point as well, and whether a mailer or whatnot. Make the opportunity to reach out to them, ask them questions. These people, city council members, these are the people that are, and even the mayor, all these local elections, these are the people that are affecting your life. So this is more likely to affect your life. Get out there and vote on November 7th. We'd like to see some great turnout. So I thank you to all the candidates for participating in this at-large debate, and best of luck out on the campaign trail. Michael Della Monica signing off for today.